In these Process Insights videos, we talk about process-based management, about process excellence. We do that because it's important. Every organisation delivers its products, services and experiences via the cross-functional processes that will not be actively managed without deliberate, mindful, process-based management. Many organisations make a significant commitment to business excellence frameworks and awards like Baldrige, EFQM and other national programs. And their stated purpose is performance excellence management and managing change and improving performance. How does that fit with our process-based management focus? Let's explore that a little more. Should an organisation focus on business excellence frameworks like EFQM or Baldrige, or process excellence, as we discuss in these videos? Spoiler alert, it's and, not or. Before we get going, I want to acknowledge the contribution to my thinking about business excellence and indeed process excellence from my colleague Louise Gonzales. Louise runs Lulu Process Design Group, and she's got a considerable background in business excellence framework as well as process excellence. In the business excellence world, Louise is a member of the board of examiners of the Baldrige National Quality Awards, so she understands in great detail the Baldrige framework and business excellence frameworks generally. So let me firstly remind you perhaps about what I mean by process excellence, and then we'll do the same for business excellence, and then we'll try and see how they might fit together nicely. So this is the primacy of process. If you've watched many of these videos, you've seen this more than once perhaps. So I'll just do a quick run through here. This is what I think is the core principle of process-based management. And it says that every organisation's got these two perspectives. It's got the vertical and it's got the horizontal. And in the vertical direction, I call it the functional organisation. The key artefact is going to be the organisation chart, and it's largely about how we make decisions about resources and related matters. But we know that we create, accumulate and deliver value in all our organisations across the organisation, across the org chart, if you like. And so that's the process or horizontal organisation. So we've got these two pieces. We've got the vertical and we've got the horizontal. And when we say we create, accumulate and deliver value across the organisation, that's of course the same as saying that's how we execute our strategy. And in that perspective, the process architecture is going to be the key artefact. So that's process-based management on a single slide, if you like. This is the core principle that drives all of our process management and process improvement work. So we can also think about it like this. As we start through here, we'll start and we say, okay, what's the organisational strategy? The strategy makes promises, and it's those promises that are executed via our cross-functional processes so we can build the process architecture. So here we're dealing with all of the processes of the organisation. And now in these next two levels, we'll start looking at a process by process. And the first thing we need to know for a particular process is what would good look like. We need to define what we mean by performance for the particular process. So what are its objectives? What are the objectives of the stakeholders? Then we can develop process KPIs and process KPI targets. And now we've defined what performance should be like. And that's important because now it allows us to go on and manage that performance. So we've got various ways of always finding performance gaps, seeking them. And they might be an opportunity gap or a problem gap. And the problem gap might be a current or an emergent problem. But whatever the type of performance gap is, we'll discover it. And then we want to say, is it important? Might be lots of gaps. Is it important? Is there a business case for fixing it and fixing it now? What's the cost of fixing it? What's the cost of not fixing it? So we need to make business case-driven decisions about what we're going to do about a particular gap. If there's a positive business case, then we get on and change the gap. And we want to be sure that that's happened. So we have some ways of monitoring to see whether the performance actually changed in the way in which we meant it to. So that's a kind of 9-step view of process excellence based on that principle of the primacy of process. Now, let's have a think about business excellence. There are lots of business excellence frameworks. I've just shown 3 here because they're, I guess, the predominant ones. There's the ISO standards, the EFQM, the European Foundation for Quality Management model, and then the Baldrige Excellence model. And, there is no formal global standard, I suppose, or maybe you could say ISO is, but EFQM and Baldrige are, at least geographically ubiquitous, and many organisations put a lot of time and effort into getting assessed and certified in those kinds of frameworks. So lots of work goes in there as well. If we wanted to look, let's just pick Baldrige as an example, not because I mean this to be a Baldrige tutorial, I'm not qualified to do that, but one of the things that we can see, and it's the same for any of those three standards I measured, or any of the national frameworks that are derived perhaps from one or more of these, we can see here that perhaps this is a more holistic view. You can see that we've got leadership and results and strategy, customers, operations, workforce, and then measurement, analysis, knowledge management in the model. And in the middle there it says integration. The point is to integrate all of those to maximise the results that we wanted to maximise. So all of that might feel like it's a more holistic view of an organisation. I think that's true, more than process. But it's not true to say that all of the process work that we do fits here within operations, because we do worry about customers, don't we? And we're executing strategy, and we're all about results, and we're all about measurement, etc. So it's not quite separate. It's not quite comparing apples and apples. We're comparing two different things here. Perhaps they've got some overlap. We'll explore that a bit more in a moment. But let's try and be a bit more specific about the differences and similarities here. We can do that in a useful way. And let's take these 6 filters here: focus, perspective, leadership, strategic intent, assessment, and outcomes. And let's try and see what the differences might be in a practical sense. So the focus in business excellence, I think we can say, is very much whole of organisation. It's difficult to do business excellence on just a piece of an organisation. But when we're looking at process excellence, we could be focused on an individual process, and it may be just one process in theory. So the focus in general is probably different. Of course, in the process world, when we're looking at lots of processes, then we've obviously taken a more higher organisational view. But business excellence is organisational and process excellence is process. That's pretty straightforward, I think. And when we come to the perspective that the two approaches take, I think business excellence could be seen to be more strategic. It's about the why and then the what, the strategies and capabilities perhaps. And process is about how. It's about how we execute strategy. We know that. So that's probably the clearest of them all. When it comes to leadership, you probably can't effectively do business excellence development and certification, etc., without serious executive level commitment. It's built to require that. We can, of course, do lots of process work. We need people engaged at the process level, but we could be doing some process work without lots of executive involvement, because we're just improving lower level processes. That's not ideal, but it can be done like that. Let's have a think about what the intent is of the two pathways. It's very much, business excellence is very much about strategic direction and in identifying that and being clear about it and what it is we need to make that possible, and of course to go on and deliver it. When we come to doing process excellence, we start out with the strategy. Certainly in my projects, the first thing I want to know before we start the project per se, is what is the strategy? Show me the strategic intent documents, the mission, the vision, purpose statements, strategic objectives, mandates, whatever it's called in the organisation, because that's our starting point. So we start with the strategy in the process world, and business excellence also includes the steps involved in creating the strategy. Now here's a big difference. When we come to assessing the level of maturity in these two pathways, the business excellence world has got it made. They win hands down, because there's a whole industry around preparing for and assessing and maintaining the business excellence certifications. There's examinations, there's education, there's all sorts of tools and techniques and support for gaining and maintaining assessment certification status. Not so much for process. Certainly there are process, the BPM maturity assessments, or just process maturity assessments. In fact, I run BPM maturity assessment service myself from time to time, and that's very useful, but it's nothing like the kind of holistic package that is business excellence assessment and certification. So in the process world, there's a lot we could learn from business excellence in that sense. And the last one there, outcomes. The business excellence documentation is very much about being customer driven, and it is for sure. Now, of course, in our process world, we should be very customer driven. We're probably more often involved, though, in the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of the processes, how it's actually working, and we want it to be, agile and optimum, and we want to bring innovations to the process to make sure we're coming up with the best result we can. And the point of doing that, of course, is to deliver the benefits to customers and other stakeholders. So it's not that we're not customer driven, but oftentimes when we're doing process work, customer sometimes seems like just somebody that's down at the end somewhere. So there's no clear description. We can't say, yes, here's the straight line between one and the other. It's not like that. We're not comparing apples and apples. We're comparing apples and oranges, and, maybe our fruit diet shouldn't be just apples or just oranges. Maybe we can have one of each, because there is some obvious overlap and there are strong benefits in each of them. Let's try and use this diagram to understand that. So if we looked here first at business excellence, we can see that we get strong C-level commitment. It's strategy outcomes driven. The whole thing is built around that. There's a very strong customer focus. As I say, there's this holistic perspective. Maybe business excellence is often at the 30,000 foot level and process is at 10,000 foot. And they've got it made in terms of advanced assessment mechanisms. If we look at process excellence, then we're about executing strategy, and we want to be able to do that in the best way possible. We want to be continuously improving the processes that matter, those high impact processes. So process performance is really important. And of course, performance is about delivery to customers and other stakeholders. To be able to do that, we need deep operational knowledge, particularly about those high impact processes that we're trying to manage. And we can do BPM maturity assessments. And I think that's a very good thing to do. It needn't be terribly invasive or difficult, and you do it, and if you were able to do that every, say, 12 months, you'd have a nice gauge about whether you're getting better at the process of process management, which would seem like a useful thing to do. So, I think we don't have to make that decision about whether we're going to do business excellence or process excellence. I think if we're doing both, perhaps we can think of ourselves as doing organisational excellence, and that might be a nice way to think about that. If you were saying which of these needs to happen first, well, hey, I'm the process guy, so I'm going to drift over here to the process side. But I think you don't need to make that choice. You don't need to do one and complete it and then go on and do the other, because neither of them actually get completed. It's a management philosophy. It goes forever. So I think you can be doing them in parallel, and there's lots of benefits both ways if you are. So to summarise, this has been a longer video, but important topics. I think the brief summary, to get the best organisational excellence outcome is that it's not a matter of choosing between business or process excellence. It's business and process excellence. Thanks for joining me for this Process Insight. I hope you found it useful. Do you have a personal experience doing both business excellence and process excellence in the same organisation? I'd love to hear from you so we can include your views in the research I'm doing with my colleague Louise Gonzales. Perhaps you have comments or questions you're able to share with everyone below. You have my contact details. I'd be delighted to connect. Thanks for sharing this time with me. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd love to hear from you.